In this lesson, we'll be installing a HTTP or web server application, and we'll look a little bit into why it's important as a web developer to have a HTTP or web server application installed in your development or local computer. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to make sure that you catch all tutorials as they come out. So let's start off by doing a little bit of a recap of what we learned about last time so that we can better understand today's lesson. So we learned that in the same way that in your normal computers, otherwise known as client computers or devices such as laptops, smartphones, etc., in the same way that you are able in such devices to install applications such as web browsers, games, etc., in server computers, there are applications that you can install. Some applications are very similar to the applications that are found in normal computers or laptops, but some applications are special or are specific to the purpose of the server. In fact, the purpose of the server, that is to say the physical computer, is so that it can actually run these software applications that are specific or that are server applications. Now, ultimately, when a person uses, in order for a person to use server applications, they have, of course, to find a way to access or reach those applications. And we discussed how this is done through domain names, for instance, codewithzoox.co.za, and how that domain names actually have, or rather there is a service in the internet called the DNS, and it's responsible for taking domain names and converting them into IP addresses or specifically public IP addresses, which are numbers or a group of numbers that usually looks like this, number dot number dot number dot number. There's another variation of it, but we won't get into that. This is the version 4 of it. These numbers are a number from 0 to 255, 0 to 255. For all 4 of them. So these unique numbers actually identify a specific hardware or a specific server. And then on top of this, each of the applications that are then running on the server then have a port assigned to them, such that the IP or indirectly the domain name together with the port number allows a client device such as a person's cell phone or laptop to be able to access the server, the hardware, through the IP address or indirectly through the domain name, and then through the port number they are then able to access a specific application that then does a specific thing or whatever specific task for them, as is the case with software applications. Remember, the purpose of a software application is to perform a specific task. So we spoke about HTTP, how the HTTP or web server applications, their main responsibility is to keep web pages and then wait for client devices to request those web pages and then serve them back. So this is where in reality, this is the application that you could say holds your website content. We can consider it that way. And then we spoke about the FTP server application, which we won't get into detail for now. And then lastly, we also spoke about how certain server applications, such as the HTTP server application and the FTP server application, they are so widely used such that there are common ports that are usually used specifically for them, such as for HTTP server applications, port 80 is used for them, and for FTP server applications, port 21 is usually used for them. So that is our recap. You have servers, with applications running in them that are responsible for serving content to users. Now, as a web developer, when you work on your website, which will be residing on your server, you often work on the HTML pages, you work on your images, you work on everything locally on your computer that you use to develop. And then in order for you to test it, you would have to install your files into the server and then check them out. The only problem with this, amongst other things, is that this means that you have to be connected to in fact, not the only problem. One of the problems is that you'd have to be connected to the internet. And if you only could test through this way of actually first uploading the content to the website and then checking them, then that would mean you can't you can't test if you are offline. That's the first problem. The second problem is that if your website is already live and you go and put something in there that's not yet working properly because you didn't test it, then some of your users, when they then use their own devices to go and visit your website, they would then see that, oh, this is weird. So in order to avoid this, what happens is that the application server, HTTP or web server application that is running on the server, you can actually install it in your own local PC, which would look something like this. So in your PC or laptop, which has your browser where you actually view things, you view that, okay, what does my website look like? Let me check it. In this same computer, you can then install that software, the HTTP server application that usually runs on your server. You can install it locally, which then allows you to then, from your browser, say, okay, let me test my application. And then instead of you having to go check remotely on your server, you can actually work on your files within that HTTP server application and then test your files properly. Now, of course, you may already be wondering that, okay, do we really have to install this server application? Because I mean, we've already been working on HTML files, and then putting them in any folder that we choose or any directory. And by the way, those two terms are interchangeable. Directory, folder, the same thing. So we've been putting HTML files in like, for instance, desktop or whatever folder we like, and then by clicking on it or opening it with the browser, we've been able to view it. And you're right by thinking that, but you see, there are certain things about a website or web application that can only really be done by a HTTP server application. So I won't be going into much detail as far as that is concerned for now, but one way of thinking about it, we say that we call this thing a server. So kind of like think about a situation whereby, let's say you wanted some specific service or you wanted a specific product, and then you go around walking around in the city looking for this product. So you're walking around, and then some dodgy guy comes to you and says, yo man, and then they have wearing this long jacket, and then they start opening it and saying, hey, yo man, I hear that you're looking for a new watch. You're looking for a wristwatch. Check these out, man. I have some wristwatches with me. So obviously, when a person does that, so you imagine yourself as the browser. You are the browser looking for this specific thing. So when a person comes to you saying that, you be dodgy and you'd say, actually, okay, maybe I may look, maybe if it's something that's just small, like I don't know, what's a small thing? A nail clipper, for instance, you may decide to say, okay, you know what, I'll buy a nail clipper. So for things that are not too dangerous, that won't necessarily cause you harm, you may decide to buy it from that dodgy looking character. But now once it starts being something like maybe an electronic device or a highly sophisticated thing like a phone or a wristwatch or anything that's complicated, you may want to say, you know what, I don't want to deal with you. I'd rather go to the professionals, people who are specialized in providing this service or this thing, and then you go to Swiss Watch, or is that the shop? American Swiss, to buy your watch, or you go to a reputable, or a place that is designed specifically for this thing, that has a good reputation. That's what you would do. So in like manner, us viewing web pages from just a random folder in our computer, that random folder is the same as that dodgy guy in the street. Sometimes the browser, which is represented by us in our analogy, the browser may say, okay, I'm okay, I'm fine, I can view this file that's coming from the desktop, I'm okay with it. But sometimes the browser may say, in some certain circumstances, which we will come across as we develop in further tutorials. As a matter of fact, I'll actually show us this in the next tutorial, where we will be looking into continuing with going back to HTML development and looking into including videos or embedding video in our web pages. I'll show you this example where the having a HTTP server application becomes important. So in some circumstances, the browser may say, you know what, nah, desktop or the normal document folder, I don't trust you guys. I trust you with simple HTML pages, it's fine. But with some things, I'd rather have a HTTP server application being the one that I'm actually going to and receiving these files from, or these services from, because I know that a HTTP or web server application is designed for this and I can trust it. So you can kind of like view that as one of the reasons why you would want to have a HTTP server application installed in your computer, and instead of serving or keeping your HTML files and other files for your website in random folders, you actually keep them within a folder that is under the control of a HTTP server application, or another way of putting it, loosely speaking, a folder that is inside the HTTP server application. So that is mainly why. That's why we would say that we would want to install a HTTP server application. And furthermore, remember, on the server, as we said, there's actually a HTTP server application that's pretty much the same, or pretty much identical to the one that we would be stopping in terms of functionality, the one that we'll be installing in our own computer. So by installing this thing in our own computer, we will get a feel of exactly what would be experienced, or almost exactly what would be experienced by our users when they go and say that they want content from our website. So our browser would act as the browsers that would be used by people from all around the world, and then this application server application, which will be in our own computer, will act as the server application that would actually be on a public server somewhere that people would be accessing. So that's the main thing that we're going to do now, is that we're actually going to install a server application. There are many server applications out there, but for our example, we're going to install Apache. And yeah, so let's get on with that. Okay, so in order to install Apache, what we are going to do is we are going to, in fact, actually install something called Xampp. Go to Xampp. So Xampp comes with, amongst other things, Apache. As you can see, if you see over here, Apache HTTP server, and a number of other things such as a database and PHP, which is PHP is actually a programming language that runs on the server side or on the server application when you want to actually do some work on the server itself. So Xampp comes with a number of things, even though for now our main interest in it is the HTTP server application. That's our main interest. It comes with other things that we'll use later on. So instead of going through the hassle of having to download and install these things as individuals, we'll just use Xampp, which will then which contains all of the things that we need. Okay, so if you just go to Google and type Xampp, you should see something like this, the very first entry. So you click on that. As you can see, that's Xampp, and then you come and go to downloads, and then you should see the latest one. I think this is the latest one down here, because that's version 7.29 for Xampp containing, yeah, that looks about right. So if you download that, which I've already done on my site, okay, I put mine under downloads software. So I already downloaded it. You'll see something like this. And then now I already have Xampp installed, so I'm not going to do the full installation. I have installed Xampp like a long time ago. Anyways, we double click on it. You're allowed to install. You may get a few warnings. Seems you have an antivirus, whatever, it's fine. Important. Okay, fine. Welcome to Xampp Setup Wizard. You go next. Now you will, as you remember what I said, Xampp is used to install a bunch of things that you usually use when you're doing web development. But for now, our main focus is Apache. So all of these, you see it says server. So these are all applications that are effective. They are server applications. But for now, we're not really interested. MySQL, that's a database. We will not install any of these. And then PHP, Perl, we don't really need this. We'll be using PHP at some later point. And then we just uncheck all of these. We're not interested in anything. So I don't even think you can uncheck PHP. So uncheck everything and accept Apache. And then you go next. And then it says Xampp, C drive Xampp, that's fine. And then you continue next. And finally, when you are done, I'm going to cancel my installation. When you are done doing this, you should have something like Xampp control panel. So when you click on Xampp control panel, you will see something that looks like this. Now, as you can see, for me, I have MySQL running, which is a database. We'll learn about those in a way in the future. Your interest is this thing, Apache. So it may have a start here when it's not running. When it's running, you see it by being green. So if it's not running, just press on start, which this button which is written stop should be start. Once you press on it, and then when it goes green, it started running, and then it will tell you down here that I am now running. In fact, let me actually just stop it. Stop Apache. Attempting to stop Apache service. So that's what it would probably look like. If I don't remember if it actually automatically comes up with starting some of the services. I'm actually not sure, but that's what it looks like if it's not started. And then you click on start, and then it should go green, and then it should tell you. Remember, we said each application on the server has a port assigned to it. You can configure it and change the port, but the default port for that's associated with that particular service is assigned. So let's start this up. Okay, there we go. It's now running. So as you can see, there are two ports that are associated with this application, port 80, and port 80 is the default HTTP port. Port 443 is the default HTTPS port. So those are the ports that are associated with this Apache, which is the HTTP server application. MySQL 3306 is the default port for MySQL. Okay, so remember we said that this thing would then be installed in your C drive under Xampp. That's Xampp. So that's where it's installed, C drive under Xampp. Of interest, you'll see that there's a bunch of things because there are other applications that I have installed with Xampp. I've installed PHP. I think when I installed it, I just ticked on everything. But the main thing that is interesting for us is this folder over here, htdocs. Now inside htdocs, that's where we then create our folders for each of our websites that we are working on. I have a bunch of websites that I work on, and sometimes even if it's not websites, I just want to try out a website idea. You will then create folders in here. As a matter of fact, this htdocs is the equivalent. On the server, there's this folder called public_html where you put all of your website content. So htdocs is kind of like that in Xampp. And then you then create your folder. For instance, the Code with Zooks website. I've created other folders. If you remember, in our last micro hack, we started working on this thing. These files have not really changed. Those are the files we'll continue working on. And then these ones, resources. This is where I put resources that I want people to be able to download as I go through tutorials. And then I'm like, okay, I want you to be able to download a specific resource. In my Code with Zooks website, I put them in this folder called resources. And then this one, playground, I won't get into it. In fact, I'll just let you know. The playground, that's where I've decided to put all of my experiments. So in playground.codewithzooks.co.za, I put when I want to try out a specific concept, and I put them inside this. But I haven't. Yeah, this is still a concept that's under development in my mind. Anyway, so I didn't want you to confuse you I'm working on this Code with Zooks thing with you in another series, in the micro hack series. So in any case, so once you install, you'll get to this htdocs. You can then create your own folder which will represent your website, and then start putting your HTML files in here, remembering the index.html is the default HTML folder. I mean the default HTML page for your website, which is inside htdocs. So now let's come back over here. Now, the HTTP server application, remember we said in order for your browser to be able to go and get content, like website content, it needs two things. Number one, it needs the IP address of the server. And number two, it needs the port number of the specific server application. So in our case, since we're actually working within, in other words, we're working on the same computer, so the server application is not in some other computer, we're working in this computer. But even though that's the case, we still need a IP address. And fortunately for us, there is one IP address which is called the local IP address. When you want to reference your own computer, you use the IP address 127.0.0.1. So let's actually test this. Let's see, I'll open here, 127.0.0.1. Then I'll say / code with Zooks. I would actually say the default port is port 80. That's what it's running on. But as I said, for in the previous tutorial, for HTTP requests, port 80 is assumed to be the default one. So when you don't provide it, it just assumes that you are working with port 80. So we don't have to specify it. So we go there, and there we go. Here's this Code with Zooks website that we have over here, and it loaded the index page by default. So yeah, but of course, as we said, people don't usually refer to computers using IP addresses. There's usually a domain name. So what we could call the local domain name, fortunately, there's also a kind of like a local domain name that references this computer. and it's a name known as localhost. So localhost and 127.0.01, they are the same thing. When you type in localhost, it normally resolves to this IP address, which then identifies this computer. So that would tell the browser that, hey, look, don't go off somewhere looking for what I'm searching for in a remote server somewhere. The service is within this computer, so go and look for the service in this specific port, port 80 by default. Remember, we said that Apache is running on port 80, so we then go and say, okay, I know I'm looking within this same computer and port 80, and then it looks at port 80, that's Apache, and then it goes, and then Apache, the server application Apache knows that, okay, let me go and look for files in the HT docs. And so that's why then we're able to, let me actually change this localhost. So localhost says this local computer, port 80, which is the default. So as a result, we don't have to apply it. Port 80 then says go to Apache. And then when we get to Apache, Apache knows that, okay, when requests arrive at me, I know HTTP requests arrive to me. I know that I need to go to my HT docs folder and then start looking from there. Hence, that's what all of this means. This is the same as that 12001 with port 80, which is the default one, which will then bring us to Apache. Then Apache again will know that, okay, where do I start? I start in HT docs. So starting from there, then now you then specify that, okay, I'm interested in this specific quote unquote website. And then once you get there, and then you are able to go to get to it. So yeah, that's it. So moving forward now, for all of our lessons, whenever we want to work on whatever we want to work on, we are going to, and if you are following along, you are no longer going to be just putting your HTML documents and your other web resources, whether it be CSS, JavaScript files, images, whatever, audio files, videos, where you're no longer going to be putting them in under desktop or documents or whatever other folder. You're going to be putting them in Xampp HT docs. Then you can go in and create, as you normally would, whatever folder. You can say my website or whatever you want to call it. And then in there, you then start putting your files. That's how we're going to move moving forward. And follow along and make sure that you install Xampp. Don't forget to make sure that Apache is checked. As a matter of fact, I think it shouldn't even allow you to uncheck it. Once you install it, make sure that you come to htdocs, create your own folder, and then you can start playing around with HTML files over there. And then I usually advise that you have your first file as index.html, because if you do that, then by you just providing the folder name, it will automatically, you won't have to say index.html basically. Because if you, for instance, you decide to call it something like home, because you want to be smart, then you'll have to type out home.html. But if you call it index.html file, you won't have to do that. It will automatically load the index.html file. So that brings us to the end of this lesson. And now we're going to go back to our HTML development and take it from there. And in the next lesson, we will be learning about including videos in our HTML or web pages, as well as we are going to see how to include captions in our videos, etc. So yeah, we're going to go back to the practical fun where we will be getting our hands dirty once again. So let's hold it there for this lesson, and I'll see you in the next lesson.
You can watch other tutorials over here, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so that you don't miss out on tutorials as they come out. Have you subscribed? Are you done? Okay, cool.